Man, I know what's going on right now. I got a bunch of banging on the ceiling, and I got stuff that ain't working.
The show's already going off the rails.
Just go. Somebody go.
Banging on the ceiling.
Somebody
banging
talk.
on the ceiling, the worst Lionel Richie song ever. Welcome to the MHRT Network's 5280 podcast.
Yep.
I'm Glenn Hauser with Mundungus, who just bounced. We got Cam Parker. We got Gage Madrid. Lots to talk about tonight. Some of us got together actually out in all four of us actually got together out in Denver. Three of us got to go to the game. So we'll break that down a little bit, talk about our experience with that, and then kind of expectations about what to not only for Thursday, but for next week, because it could be a lot of transactions that are possible to happen. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Excited to talk some ball. Excited to basically have a group therapy session over what has transpired over the last few days.
I feel like it's been a group therapy session these last few weeks, right? I mean, but yeah, it's going to be
years, Cam.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
True.
But it's a fun conversation, and I will actually say this weekend was really hard for me because it was such a disappointing weekend of everything that transpired, that it was like that was the first time I think in covering the Denver Broncos and producing content that I just did not want to produce content anymore. Like I was down so bad after that game, and it had nothing to do with like the Sean Payton stuff or the comments with Nathaniel Hackett or anything like that. It's just when it compounds, time after time, and and weeks after weeks, and years after years, it's a rough time. So it was just rough. I was down bad, man.
I have to say, I'm kind of surprised Gage is going with the Jets green backdrop, but listen, we all can jump on bandwagons here.
To each their own.
I mean, we could try the virtual background again, but we all know Steven does not cooperate with it. I already have a bad connection as it is. But yeah, man, it's just been the way that the team lost that game, just the missed opportunities, the bad rush defense. Once again, man, this has been one of the worst run defenses I've seen in a long time. Offense obviously had their own issues as well. It was dejecting. It really, really was. It was dejecting.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to answer Bill's comment there. No, I honestly had a blast. But maybe that's the other frustrating part, was doing a 3.5 hour neighborhood, not with Bill, but a 3.5 hour neighborhood where that was the performance we were seeing on Sunday.
This was one of those games that really, for the first time in all the years that I've been watching the Broncos, forget about the Peyton and Hackett deal. That kind of, I know after the game that a lot, was brought to light, and Hackett gets a game ball and all the hugs on the sideline. But based on what had happened the previous 4 games for the Broncos, it was like this was a make or break game, not just for the playoffs, but really for the direction that the team was going to take. We had lost our previous 2 home games to the Raiders and the Commanders, and here was an opportunity to essentially bounce back, get back to 2-3, and then have a short week for Kansas City. Now that we're 1-4, things do look bleak, Cam. We've got Kansas City, on a short week at Arrowhead. We've got Green Bay coming back to Denver. Then we're back to Kansas City at Denver, and then we've got at Buffalo. So conceivably, we could be 1-8 1 month from now with a lot of our well-liked players shuttled off to other teams. And that is the dejecting part for me with this Jets game and with this loss, because it's changing the direction of really the franchise as we know it.
Yeah, and I think that this is the thing I think that's also important. It's really important for our, to kind of circle back on something we talked about. And maybe to a certain extent, we probably have ourselves to blame, or I should say maybe myself to blame in just kind of embracing once again, the optimism of a new year, and obviously the optimism of faith and the excitement around having him in the building with Russell Wilson and thinking that they're going to be a playoff team. But we also have to remember that this is also a punting year to a certain extent, with Sean Payton and understanding, who he wants to roll with long term. And so the idea of a full rebuild or something to the likes of a rebuild is something that Bronco fans have to be embracing. Now, me and Gage, funny enough, we're having this conversation, venting to one another before the show began. But it was just like, I think that fans are probably expecting something to happen in terms of a slew of moves because of what happened. And when we say a slew of moves, we're saying like 6, 7, maybe even more moves happening, during the season. And frankly, I don't see that happening. But I will say from the standpoint of 3 moves at the very least, I could actually see, or I should say 2 at the very least, 3 at the very most. And, those are players like, Garrett Bowles possibly being shipped off, Frank Clark being the most obvious one, Cortland Sutton, of course, being a wide receiver that is, they want to get off that contract. And I think I tweeted it, I said that, when they made the move of Randy Gregory and they shed that contract away, it made the most logical sense that, if they're looking at shedding off some of these contracts and players that aren't necessarily performing and dare I say the E word, effort, and unfortunately not putting in the effort in that wide receiver room, I'm taking the wide receivers that are putting in the most effort, and that would be Jared Jeudy and Marvin Mims going forward on my organization rather than Cortland. So right. Cortland, Bowles, and Frank Clark are your most obvious candidates.
Yep. And on the Insiders podcast with the NFL Network's top 5 insiders, James Palmer, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, Mike Garafolo, and those guys, they basically all were saying Frank Clark is the top guy that could be moved. He was the first name that was mentioned. Cortland Sutton was the second name mentioned. And one name that we did not hear them mention that I think is noteworthy here is Jerry Jeudy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have seen that with both Sutton and Jeudy, in these rumors. Do you guys see a scenario where both could get moved? I think that would just be really absolutely just burying the wide receiver room for the future. But what do you guys think?
I mean, it's a pretty clear signal you're waving the white flag. I mean, that tells you you're going into a full-blown rebuild because you want to see what you have in Marvin Mims to a more extent than we are now. You want to see what we got in Brandon Johnson, little Jordan Humphrey, Traquan Smith. Is he going to be a part of this moving forward? So those are the conversations that you're going to have if you do move on from both Sutton and Jeudy. I think, again, just where we are with finances with Cortland Sutton and how poorly he played in that Jets game and the 2 fumbles he had in Miami. Mm-hmm. I hate using the L word, but he's been a liability. He has been a liability on the field, and it's a problem. So at this point, I think Cortland Sutton, Frank Clark, he barely played in the Jets game. He was injured up until that point. I mean, we've seen we've seen Nick Benito usurp him on the depth chart. We've seen Jonathan Cooper usurp him on the depth chart. Those 2 guys we are going to want to roll with and see what they can produce for us long-term through the rest of the season. And as Cam and I were talking about before the pod started, if they do move on from Frank Clark, I could see them picking up like a free agent veteran off the street, like a Melvin Ingram, a Carlos Dunlap, somebody like that to give a veteran body in that edge rusher room. But overall, man, Frank Clark has been a massive disappointment. Cortland Sutton's been a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
And they're showing that they are not going to be pieces long-term heading into this rebuild.
Yeah.
You know, with Court, I've been a fan of his for a long time. You can see him over my left shoulder. You know, but just, I mean, the last play of the game was kind of indicative of how things have gone really this season as far as Sutton and his effort. And I hate to say it because I've been a fan for very long, you know, since he was originally drafted. But Broncos were down, game was clearly lost, but they wanted to run one more play. And everybody was hustling back to the line of scrimmage to run that play, except Court, who's like slapping five with the Jets defensive backfield. And to me, that is like, he didn't give a shit at that moment. Even just like narrowing the gap, even just making some progress, finishing the game, not even finishing the game strong, just finishing the game. And it to me, that said a lot. And I don't know if you could see that on TV, but we could certainly see that in person.
You know,
absolutely.
And to the Frank Clark point, I mean, because he's not done much, there's a scenario where the Broncos honestly could see a scenario where they don't get anything for him and they just cut him outright. And what's funny is if they do cut him outright, don't be surprised if he goes back to the Kansas City Chiefs. I actually say that not so tongue in cheek, you know, but don't be surprised if he goes back there. But, you know, to the Jerry Jeudy point, I will say what would be interesting is if they moved on from him, then what was the point of picking up his 5th-year option? I think people forget about that I think that, you know, Sean Payton and George Payton and company, like, you know, they picked up his 5th-year option. And so that alone should signal somewhat that he is in somewhat of their future plans. And I think that's to like things change, some things change, and, you know, and possibly like directions change like in a season. And if there's anything that helps point to possibly a change of direction, it is during the season. But as we said earlier, like the 2 wide receivers that are frankly giving you actually 3 wide receivers that are giving you the most effort is one of those wide receivers is not Cortland Sutton. It's Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Johnson, and Marvin Mims. Those are your 3 wide receivers that are giving in the most effort on a weekly basis. And so, and we said it before that Jerry Jeudy was arguably your wide receiver 1 anyway. And also he's a wide receiver that frankly does fit what Sean Payton would want in this type of offense. So you have to move forward with a guy like Jerry Jeudy. And, you know, so I think it's very conceivable that that they could even move on from a guy like Garrett Bowles as well. And I think the thing that, you know, people, myself included, forgot about was they have Cam Fleming on the roster. I think, and so, I mean, like if they do move on from Garrett Bowles, you could plug Cam Fleming in, sign a depth tackle, you know, to your room if they move on from Garrett Bowles as well. So now the one thing I was going to push back myself on the Garrett Bowles trade is from the positional value perspective. If you move on from Bowles, that may signal to the rest of the league you possibly might be tanking.
Yeah. And with depth tackle, though, we do have Alex Palczewski potentially coming back from IR soon. He could potentially be that depth tackle guy. I know if this is the direction the team wants to go, see what you have in the young guys. Alex Palczewski, I feel like, is a perfect candidate for that. He showed a lot during training camp, maybe not as like a starting tackle, but certainly he could be like your swing tackle of the future moving forward. So that's one guy that if the Broncos were to move on from Garrett Bowles, I wouldn't be surprised at all if maybe they threw the rookie into the fire, the undrafted free agent, just to see what he can do, man.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's in the latter part of the season, you know. That's something I would definitely keep an eye on. And, you know, if Mike McGlinchey or Bowles were to go down with an injury, I would not be surprised at all if maybe they elect to play Palczewski over Cam Fleming just to give the young player the experience.
Mm-hmm. Cam, I think that Frank Clark is going to get some sort of compensation should the Broncos decide to trade him, simply because of the fact that not just the Twitter trolls are saying it, but like real people in the know, the insiders, they all seem to be referencing Frank Clark is garnering interest. And as long as there's more than one team that wants him, we could potentially pull out, you know, a late draft, you know, a a third-day draft choice, or certainly not a second-day pick, but I think we could get a third-day draft choice for him. And just move on. He does not look happy, and he's not contributed. So,
and you hate to put salt on an open wound, but he had an illness. I was going to use air quotes, but like he had an illness that was reported today, and he missed practice. But the reason why I say that, like,
he's sick of being on the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
The Jonathan Taylor ankle injury. Is that?
Well, I was going to say Frank Clark is giving me an illness for not playing. But I think for the reason why I say he may not actually garner anything is like, right, because like so often sometimes like you see teams, they may show a lot of interest, but they know that you're possibly going to cut him, right? And so they're not going to give up the certain assets knowing that you're going to probably release him sooner rather than later. So that's, I think, the reason why I say that. And especially from this season's perspective, like, you know, he's not amounted to anything. And, you know,
to quote Jim Mora, diddly poo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Speaking of diddly poo, man, I want to go back to Cortland Sutton a little bit more here, because I cannot stress enough one play that sticks out to me. It was highlighted by, I want to say, Matt Ryan on the broadcast, where he had a comeback route on a key 3rd down and 14. Russ puts the ball on the freaking money. Cortland just lazily jogs into the initial part of his route, and then when he stems off, he's equally as lazy, and he doesn't come back to the football. If he comes back to the ball, that's an easy completion. Russ puts it on the money. That alone tells me where Cortland Sutton's mindset is right now.
I don't mean to, you know, obviously pour more salt on the open wound, but if I'm not mistaken, that was the same play that Sauce Gardner actually had in his hands and frankly could have picked off. And that was the play that, you know, had Russ actually, you know, thrown that interception, people would be talking more about, you know, how great of a play it was by Sauce Gardner and not necessarily about the effort of Cortland Sutton. From the Broncos Twitter, Broncos country side of things, we probably would have mentioned about the E word and the, you know, the liability part of it with Cortland Sutton, but like, you know, they obviously latch more to the Sauce Gardner idea. But I mean, yeah, it's just like, it was just such a frustrating play, because that is the play that really stuck out to me, because like it's pretty evident. And I've not had a chance to see Tim Jenkins's breakdown yet, but I mean, like, it was pretty evident when you saw that particular play that was like, why is he letting up on a comeback route?
Seriously, yeah. It's terrible.
Bwana wants to know if we can name a player you were impressed with.
Impressed.
Leave me alone. I'm still not sure I want to talk. Can you name a player you were impressed with? Suffering succotash.
I'm going to go back to my old well here, Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's about all I can think of right now. That was Jaleel McLaughlin, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, if a skill is running for your life, we got Russ.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think as far as people that I'm impressed with, I think you also have to go with the given, and that would be Pat Surtain. I mean, you know, I think there was, you know, the moment where he obviously had the insane interception on, you know, Garrett Wilson, which was basically catching the football in his crotch. I mean, like it was that crazy. And, you know, and I think too, for like the vantage point of finishing till the very end, you know, and unfortunately, like it's unfortunate it happened this way, but I will say that Jerry Jeudy, the way that he finished and catching those big passes near the end of the game was really great to see. So again, like if you're talking building blocks, it's the Bama boys for me. You know, it's Pat Surtain and it's Jerry Jeudy that really kind of came up big, you know, really when it mattered at the end of the game.
And we had a great look at that Pat Surtain interception, man. It happened almost right in front of us. It was sick.
In between the thighs, it was really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have thought a catch like that would have come from Josie Jules. Never mind.
Good God. Good God. Oh, boy.
Wow.
Well, Glenn took it worse, so it's fine. Yeah, we just got word that Greg Dulcich is going to be coming back.
Yes.
I'm trying to spin it back.
Yes. It was
yeah, let's
Those
talk Greg
jewels are stuck in
Dulcich.
my head now.
Yeah, Greg Dulcich. What is it? Sean Payton said today that he's coming along. But they don't know. They don't know whether or not that he'll play on Thursday. But
Yeah.
Sounds like a big fat no to me.
Yeah.
I think that it's more realistic to expect him week 7 against Green Bay after you have that 10-day mini bye to really get him healthy. And same for Baron Browning. That's kind of the target that I always felt like they were attaining with Baron Browning. And that could maybe also spill into the Frank Clark cutting a little bit more. I mean, you've got to get some reps in there for Baron Browning. You have Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. I don't know how many reps you want to take away from those guys. So that could even more entice the Broncos to move on from Frank Clark.
Yeah.
I love it when Bill posted, "Way to go, Glenn, with the jewels. Face turquoise covering eyes."
Yeah.
So obviously, and again, I missed the first part because fuck me, right?
You got the shingles.
Yeah. But obviously, we're looking
Mike
at
has shingles tonight.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And so, it's pretty obvious we're looking at some sort of rebuild, right?
Yes.
With the new ownership, we know at least Sean Payton's going to be here to help build it. We know that Pat Surtain is not going to be included in any trade talks.
We think.
I'm like 99% sure. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson is not going to be traded. I'm not saying
I don't think
released.
traded.
I'm saying traded. He won't be traded. Other than that, I think that the roster is pretty wide open as to who potentially will get traded, because I do think there are going to be trades before the trade deadline. And I know, Gage, you talked about earlier, Justin Simmons is a hot name out there. Not that I want him to go, but he is a hot name out there.
He is. The couple guys that are financially untouchable, I feel like, would be Mike McGlinchey and Zach Allen. Just because you just inked them to big deals, I think financially you'd eat too much money moving on from them right away. So I'd throw them just for financial reasons in the untouchables as well. But with Justin Simmons, man, it's tough. I know that we got a lot of Justin Simmons fans in this chat here and in this podcast family, but I will also say that I don't feel like Justin Simmons' play has been quite at the level we need it to be. Plus, he's had that injury history. That might have diminished his trade value. The Broncos would have probably been better off selling Justin Simmons a little bit high this past offseason. And maybe then they would have actually netted a second-round pick. I don't know if they net a second-round pick for Justin Simmons right now. I really don't. We might be staring down third-round pick territory. And at that point, is it even worth moving on from him? I don't think it is. Yeah.
And I mean, the one thing I was going to say is, you could see a team that's a contending team maybe overpay. True. And, and that's where maybe like a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who lost, their safeties this offseason, maybe they're a team that, you could possibly see kick the tires a little bit.
I'd love to see Justin in Philly, honestly. That'd be a good spot.
Justin in Philly, at that point, we could get a second-round pick, potentially, Gage, if it's one of those teams that is likely picking so deep in the second round that it's essentially a third-round pick, right?
Right.
So, like Cam said, the Philadelphia Eagles, another team. And Justin's my favorite player, so this is just that an exciting topic for me.
Yep.
But I would love the guy to play not only in a playoff game, but to have a chance at a Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphins would be a very good option too. He's from Florida. They're a contender. I believe they do have the draft capital at least in the second round to offer up for somebody like that to shore up the defense. I don't know what his relationship is like, with Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator versus a head coach, but he could walk right into that scheme and fit right in immediately.
And, I was going to say, and I have it on good authority, not that this has helped much, if you would change teams, but I have it on pretty good authority that he wouldn't be moving. So so regardless if he went to Florida, like the Miami Dolphins, or another team that I would throw in there would be the Jacksonville Jaguars, being a young team, bringing a vet safety in there. for that team. So Jacksonville and Miami, obviously the Philadelphia Eagles, but I've been on pretty good authority that I don't think he'll be, moving out of Colorado.
Well, and one of the other teams that hasn't been mentioned, that's an up-and-coming team, I would put them third or fourth in the NFC, and they'd have the draft capital, is Detroit Lions.
Yes.
They still need help on defense.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a good place for any defender that might leave Denver to go.
Mm-hmm.
So my main business partner on the syndicate is the host of Detroit Lions Syndicate. He's a Detroit Lions fan. And we were having conversations about Justin Simmons and Pat Surtain as well, because they just lost one of their corners in Emmanuel Mosley. With Pat Surtain, he says that probably not 2 first-round picks, so he's probably off the table. But to give another piece in the secondary, especially at safety, because I believe they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson for a fairly extended period of time. Yep. Yeah, so Detroit could be a really good option for Justin Simmons as well.
Gage, you kind of opened up a little bit of a Pandora's box of a conversation possibly that we had pre-pod. But, the Pat Surtain conversation, he's definitely untouchable for us. But I think that if you're having a conversation and, you're the Broncos and, you're taking calls, I'm sure that there will be a conversation with some of those teams about number 2. And I think at the very least, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Me and Gage talked about it, but I think at the very least, the conversation has to be at least 2 first-round picks and a stud player coming with you. And, one of the examples, and I'm not saying on this tier, but if you're looking at it from the standpoint of doing I guess to a certain extent, a Champ Bailey and Clinton Portis type of deal, but doing a Pat Surtain and a Justin Jefferson swap, basically, and so where you put Pat Surtain over with Minnesota, and then obviously Justin Jefferson comes here, it's getting to that point for me, you have to really sell yourself with Pat Surtain because that's how good he is.
I do not want to lose him. Oh my gosh.
No, but Justin Jefferson, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to play defense? Well, right, be a dynamic offense because there'd be shit left for defense, right?
Well, and that's where I was going to go. Outside of Pat Surtain, you look at corners, right? I mean, Damari Mathis. I think he's been very disappointing so far. Chilson. Ooh, he brought me a pot. Thank you. It must be an apology for all the banging around on the ceiling. So as he's walking out, he goes, "Nope." So now I don't remember where I was. Oh, Damari Mathis, right? I think he's been very disappointing. Sean Payton said that he likes younger players and likes to develop younger players. Does that mean that we're going to be saying goodbye to potentially DJ Jones, Mike Purcell, K'Wan Williams, Kareem Jackson, Cortland Sutton, all these veteran players, and trying to rebuild in the draft around younger guys?
Well, Kareem, you're not going to get a guy for. But I think one of the things that we learned in the game, and hopefully you guys will agree with me, is that DJ Jones's value to the defense was very, very evident after he went out of the game, got injured, and did not return. The whole nature of the Jets' ability to run changed the moment DJ was not in his spot. Yeah. And let's, game ball to Hackett, aside, the Jets' offense was garbage. Yeah. The Jets' offense was terrible. They had the long run from Breece Hall, but they had so many opportunities inside the red zone and did not capitalize. It shows that the Broncos defense was lights out for a good portion of that game. But DJ Jones, I don't know. I for a position group that is struggling so much, to get rid of the guy who's either best or second best from that group would be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and I think it also proves that of what the damage could possibly do when you do have Mike Purcell and DJ Jones together. We finally got a chance to see that in terms of both of them together. But if they're going forward with a young team, I hate to bring it up again, but that's proof that they should keep Jerry Jeudy. I'm just saying, like, if you want developing players, something that Jerry Jeudy has yet to see, Jerry Jeudy fits that bill of a young wide receiver that they can develop under Sean Payton, and a wide receiver that they can truly become the player that they need to within that offense, which is something that, he hasn't seen. But also there's been times where even in a failed offense, he's actually performed. I mean, obviously there was a year last year and his rookie year. I mean, so like you see glimpses. Now let's develop it.
Now,
but Gage, can you? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, like, can you see Jeudy wanting to stay with the Broncos just by virtue of the hatred that he receives from the fans online? I can't see it. He can't be happy here.
I was actually going to have this conversation just now. Actually, I was going to say, like, Jeudy, I mean, he might be an impasse himself. It's like, maybe he's going to be like, I'm not going to play unless I get a new deal, or I just don't want to be here anymore. At the end of the day, the ball's kind of in his court here. He could entertain like a holdout or all that nonsense, kind of like Josh Jacobs did with the Raiders. Ultimately, it obviously materialized in money, but Jerry Jeudy, he strikes me as someone who could be like, I'm not playing unless I get a new deal. And at that point, Denver would be at an impasse. Okay, do we really want to give Jerry Jeudy all of this money and commit to that kind of financial cap hit right now? And I don't think they do. That's kind of where I feel like this is the point where if you're going to, you have to make the decision if you're going to commit to Jeudy long term. And if the answer is no, then I feel like you need to sell high right now. That's kind of how I feel.
But sure, and I was going to say that, but also that comes back to the conversation we had earlier, which was, okay, so if you don't see Jeudy in your plans, what was the point of picking up his fifth-year option?
Well, things have changed since you picked up his fifth-year option. I mean, when you picked up the fifth-year option, you thought the team was going to be in a much better spot. I mean, the mindset in that building, I believe, was that, okay, we brought in Sean Payton. He's going to fix Russell Wilson. This defense is still going to be good. They actually weren't in the rebuild mindset. Things have changed since the point where they picked up Jerry Jeudy's fifth-year option, I feel like.
Yeah, and I do want to address this crazy bill at it again. Says nothing's going to change until Vance Joseph is gone. It's the defense that lost these 4 games. No other way to state it. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there. The defense against the Jets was, I'll say, average. It wasn't great. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad. The defense put the offense in position for the offense to win the game, and the offense couldn't get it done. Now, you look at Vance Joseph, right? We've all talked about how Vance Joseph needs to go. If you move on from Vance Joseph, what is your option? There isn't one. Where do you go, Parker?
Actually, I it's hard to predict right now, but like there is as crazy as it sounds, there is a window where, say something happens with what's going on down there in New Orleans, that if they do let go of Dennis Allen, you might be able to get Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator, which is hilarious considering he has ties to the Denver Broncos and everything. But
that wouldn't be till the end of the year, though.
Right.
I mean,
right.
We're talking move on.
I'm talking like right now or bye week. There's nobody on the roster other than one person or on staff that has actually been a defensive coordinator. And if you've never been a defensive coordinator before and you want to move into being a defensive coordinator, would you want to be an interim with a really bad defense? Because I wouldn't.
Well,
no, you
I
wouldn't want that
I also have a little bit of a knock on Christian Parker here because the secondary is supposed to be his baby, right? We've seen some bad secondary play this year. I mean, Damari Mathis has regressed. The communication in the secondary has been dog shit. Absolute dog shit from veteran players like Kareem Jackson. I'm putting that on Christian Parker. That's who I'm putting that on.
Yeah, and I think that is a conversation to be had. I mean, we can talk about how knowledgeable Christian Parker is, and how he's an up and coming star in terms of being a defensive coordinator. We can talk about all that, but I mean, like, he still is very much to play. And frankly, I would say Marcus Dixon as well. Like Marcus Dixon is another one that deserves, a fair amount of blame, especially with, the defensive line, the way that they've been, performing. And the pass rush to a certain extent. Like, they absolutely deserve some criticism. And, but I will say, Christian Parker is probably your most obvious choice, probably within the building, as far as to be defensive coordinator. If you were to tell someone, hey, would you want to be the defensive coordinator? That's literally a promotion. So he's not saying no to that. Yeah, so of course not. And so, as far as, the end of the season, that's going to be a different conversation. But I think if anything, the time to move on from Vance Joseph would be after the Packers game. And once you've entering the bye week, that is actually the only time to possibly move on from Vance. But because after that point, you're learning a new schematic differences between Vance and that new defensive coordinator and whatnot. But I would just still say overall, as painful it is to, pour, the alcohol in your eyes, the bleach videos, and watching Vance Joseph, call it.
I just drink it. I don't pour it in my eyes.
That too. But
it's free.
Yeah. What's the famous video of the guy that, when he does the thing over the cliff, and then he drinks the bleach, basically. That is basically all of Broncos country watching Vance Joseph, running a defense. But it's the thing is, it's the more this thing continues, just expect Vance Joseph to be let go at the end of the year. Again, it goes back to our conversation. It's you can't necessarily expect changes like this unless it is something catastrophic to what we saw with Nathaniel Hackett. That was just true. You could say it was the 70-20 game, but that was a little bit too early in the game. But if the 70-20 game happened at the end of the year, then 100% Vance Joseph, would have been let go. But since it happened early, you're not going to see it now.
What's interesting that the two coaches that you guys both called out were the only returning coaches from the previous regime. So it's just interesting that those are the ones that you cited as having the most struggling units. But Damari Mathis, it does annoy me. Every time he gets up, he's waving his arms around, trying to get some flowers for whatever play he's made, not even paying attention to the fact that most of the time he's flagged for his efforts, this, at least this season. But with VJ, if you got rid of Vance, and, I've had mixed feelings about this, but if you get rid of Vance, we've talked to people that have on-field experience, and they've said that this is a guy that if you get rid of him, the effort, you still the players. It's the players' effort that is really a hindrance right now. For that, that there are obviously some schematic things that we've called out over the course of the last few games, but a lot of it is the effort. And Cam even talked about the communication, all that stuff is missing.
Yep. All of it.
Yeah.
And again, the individual that we spoke with again was really saying that this is just an effort-based thing, man. The tackling, I asked this person, what can you do fundamentally about tackling when you can't tackle in practice, basically? And he walked me over to the bus, bus right in front of the stadium, and pointed at John Lynch and pointed at Champ Bailey and said, those two knew how to tackle and they didn't practice tackling. Just that was kind of where it's a mindset thing at the end of the day, man. Are you going to go in there and put your body on the line and fuck that guy up?
To quote Patrick Chiotti on Twitter, on the BPA show, and obviously he does the Let's Ride show with Chris Harris Jr. He put on Twitter about 12:50. What was it yesterday? He said to add fuel more to the fire is that the Broncos are currently lead the league with missed tackles right now with 67 through 5 weeks, which would put them on pace for 228 on the season. And in terms of to correlate it to last year, they had 145 missed tackles in 2022. So to put a bow on all of that, Pat says it is a coaching issue.
So I want to be fair to everyone with what we saw in the Jets game, right? So if you look at every game we've had this season, it's been the defense is a problem, the defense is a problem, the defense is a problem. Against the Jets, the defense allowed, 2 touchdowns? 2 offensive touchdowns? 1? And the rest were all field goals into safety?
Yeah.
And then there was the defensive score for the Jets, right? So the defense did its job by keeping them to field goals instead of touchdowns.
Did they, though?
Now, there still is a tackling
They did.
problem. They did. That doesn't even make any sense. They allowed 1 touchdown to the Jets offense. The rest were field goals and a safety and a defensive touchdown for the Jets. The bigger problem in the Jets game. No. I'm not saying that. That was keeping them out of the end zone. Now, obviously, there is a running game issue. Like, any team can run on the Broncos defense, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger problem, and Gage, I wanted to ask you about it because I saw the video you put out earlier today. The bigger problem was there were some suspect offensive play calls that didn't make any sense.
Absolutely. I would also say there was some suspect offensive play calls on the other side from Nathaniel Hackett that put the Jets offense at a disadvantage, and that kind of made the defense for Denver look a little better. That's just kind of what I will say to that. But in terms of Denver's offensive play calling to that point, oh my God, it was bad. I mean, on 3rd down in the red zone, calling a bubble screen on 3rd down and 7. I mean, that's a tough down and distance. That was bad. Couple of ineffective runs. Whatever that double reverse was.
When Sauce Gardner was out.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the play after.
That. Yes, literally. Sauce Gardner went out, and I was telling Mike and Glenn, okay, they have a backup corner in. Sutton was on him one-on-one. Test Sutton. And for whatever reason, Sean calls this stupid double reverse, and they can't efficiently execute it. I don't care that it worked in practice, man. That was terrible execution from P. Ryan and Mims. That caused an inopportune turnover. Obviously, Mims with his fumbled punt, that was bad. And then with Russell Wilson's fumble at the end, that was Russ missed a hot read out to his running back. I initially, when I first saw the play, like on the Jumbotron on my phone, thought that it was miscommunication between McGlinchey and Miners, but after looking at it, I don't know if Russell was expecting the back to chip or what, but he had no clue that Quincy Williams was rushing. He turns his back to him, and by that point, he has the ball out like a loaf of bread and fumbles it. It's terrible ball security by Russell Wilson, but at the same time, it's Russ not knowing his assignment. And then I believe it was the play before that, Russ took a really bad sack because P. Ryan had no clue who to block. He went the complete opposite direction, and they got a free rusher. I believe it was down the A gap. It was bad.
So
Russ gets pounded, by the way. I mean, it was seeing it in person. Like, the amount of hits that he takes is just amazing throughout the course of the game.
Yeah. So I just want to be fair. Like, I'm not sitting here and just throwing all the blame on Vance Joseph. There's issues with Russell Wilson. Not that many, to be fair. He's balling out.
All right, Greeny.
There's issues with the offensive line. There's issues with the defensive line, the secondary, Vance Joseph, Sean Payton, the special teams with Marvin Mims fumbling that ball. Like,
run game. There's
issues everywhere. It's not just one person.
Oh, and when you're a bad football team, to quote something that was a famous quote in their offseason, there's dirt on, maybe it was Peyton, but there's dirt on like every single hand, I mean, so I think that, like, when you're a bad football team, that's going to happen. And, for as much as, it feels like the offense is better, they're not, that was the first time they were truly tested by a top 5 defense, and they didn't help themselves at all. When they were in the red zone, they, decided to do stupid stuff by running screens and misdirection stuff when, put the ball in, or take some shots actually to the red zone, I mean, like, do some necessary things. And, and I think they literally froze. I mean, they literally froze when they were in the red zone. And that's a sign of a very bad football team. And I feel like, it's one of those things where when you're a bad football team, there's dirt on literally every single hand.
We had 1st and goal from the 5 and didn't get anything more than a field goal. Like, it's just so, we were we were no better as far as, converting in the red zone, but we had our opportunities too. We went into halftime with a lead, and just the tale of two halves kicked in once again, and we could not control it. We could not control Breece Hall. That guy had 177 yards rushing, take away his 72-yard scamper, and he still had over 100 yards.
Yep.
We just cannot stop these runners.
It's because we moved seats, Glenn. That's why.
Right? Seriously, once you guys came down, it was all over.
It's just all shit from there.
In that second half, though, Denver got the ball to start the second half, and Russ had a really bad second down miss. I can't remember exactly who he missed, but it was a bad second down miss. And after that, obviously, they have to punt it away, and then the next play is the Breece Hall touchdown.
Yeah.
So that's really where things went to hell for Denver.
It was the back-to-back 3-and-outs to start the half. That's basically what had happened. But I mean, I think just over the course of this, they have to be able to. The Broncos have got to find a way to have that consistent running game. It's something that they teased us, throughout the offseason, that they wanted to be a physical ground and pound football team, and I to play devil's advocate on Jaleel McLaughlin. I know it's early in his career, but are they just afraid based on his size that they don't want to, have him be a 20 carry back or something, or have him be like that type of running back, at least this early on in his career. And they want to, share some of his carries, by that stand, by that.
There were a couple plays where he got stonewalled though.
Yeah. So it's like, and I think that's the thing is when you want to have him be a 3-down back, you want him to show facets that he's good in other areas. And me and Bill talked about this on the neighborhood, but it's you want him to show he's good in pass blocking. You want him to show that he's, good in some of those areas where he can be effective, but he does touch the ball and he's lightning in a bottle, and so it does show that he does need more carries, but maybe they did miss Javonte a little bit in this game, right? Maybe they did miss Javonte, but by that same token, you still have to show a steady diet of the running game, and maybe that's one of the reasons why Samaje Perine is just a little bit off in the running game, is because you're not seeing as much of a consistent rushing attack, from this team. And if you did see a little bit more of a rushing, game, you would see a little bit more of that off schedule, that off play action stuff with Russ that might be a little bit more effective. But by that same token, when the defense puts you in a really bad spot game after game after game after game, you're going to be forced to throw yourself out of it nearly every single game. And thankfully they were at least able to get that victory against Chicago, but you can't rely on that week in and week out.
Yeah, but I feel like it's especially been the run game in the second half where defenses are making adjustments. They're bringing safeties down to have an extra body in the run game. They're putting 8 guys in the box. They're making those adjustments to really try to take away Denver's run game when they have that slight lead coming out of the half, especially. I mean, that's one where Denver wants to try to take clock off the ball or take time off the clock, run the ball, establish that ground and pound mentality. The Jets did that. I mean, they were just phenomenal running the ball in that second half. They really went to old school ground and pound football, except for the drive where they put the ball in Zach Wilson's hands towards the end and he throws the terrible pick to Pat Surtain. I thought Zach Wilson was pretty bad in this game, to be honest. He had a couple nice throws, but on the whole, I thought he was pretty bad.
We should call that interception the crotch rocket.
Oh, wow. So the same person we were talking about before that was explaining, tackling and the player's effort. I was having a conversation with him on the drive home, and one of the things that he brought up is that if you look in the second half on offense, you could see how much pressure Russell Wilson was under, and the wide receivers seemed to be running deep, developing routes. And he was saying that he couldn't understand why the adjustment wasn't made to have the receivers cut the routes off short or do shorter routes so that he could get the ball out.
It's also one of the reasons why you saw so many targets, and this isn't just this game, but to the running backs lately. There's a reason why you see so many of those, targets to Samaje Perine or even Jaleel McLaughlin in the last, couple weeks. So, I mean, I think that like you absolutely have to see more of those scramble drills, and that goes to the wide receivers. Like that goes to the wide receivers. When you see Russ running for his life, come back to the ball. Come back to the ball, which you saw, at least the first couple weeks, you saw them actually perform a little bit better at that. But now, like, where is it? Like, where is it? Where is that, in their repertoire now? And I think we saw a few times, like from Judy, you saw a little bit, and from but obviously, you don't see it with Cortland Sutton lately. You really don't. And, but maybe guys like Brandon Johnson, Jerry Judy, you'll probably see with Marvin Mims and the way he can attack a football, but like, it is far more inconsistent than it needs to be consistent.
Yep. I can't remember who was saying this, but I heard somebody talking about what makes the Chiefs offense so efficient, especially Travis Kelce, and what makes that offense so quarterback friendly. It's the receiver's ability to make adjustments on the fly, stop a route short, find a little void in the zone coverage to sit down. Travis Kelce is phenomenal at that.
Mm-hmm.
Come back to the football on scramble drills, make it an easy completion for the quarterback. That's what it means when you say a receiver is quarterback friendly or an offense is quarterback friendly. This offense and this weaponry group right now is the polar opposite of quarterback friendly.
So Gage,
and even Jerry Judy. I mean, I'm sorry, Glenn.
No, finish
even
your
Jerry
point.
Judy, like we saw him with that big completion opportunity against Chicago on that corner route in the end zone where you just kind of got alligator arms, man. That's not quarterback friendly.
So Andy Reid certainly allows like the Mahomes and Kelce connection to operate that way. And there's a lot of plays that look like they're set plays that actually are turned out to be improvised by one or both of the guys. Do you think that's something that Sean Payton is fine with the receivers doing in order to free up like that? Or do you think he's so strict as far as his offense is concerned that he doesn't allow that?
It's hard to say, but like this is because we're basing this off of week 5. I think this is here's the pushback on this in terms of like the rebuild comment and trading guys like Cortland Sutton and or Jerry Judy, right? Like you also want to see some development possibly under a first year coach, and maybe possibly developing something like that. But I think if it moreover what you're seeing is not developing, then you have to, move on from that. But I can see Sean Payton doing some of those things, but doing those things with, a wide receiver group that he would trust and work with, and possibly with a guy like a Russell Wilson, a quarterback, or, whoever they go at quarterback, with this potential rebuild that we might be seeing. So I think that like Sean Payton, absolutely, with how creative he is as an offensive mind, he's one of the more creative, as rough as at times it's been this year, the Broncos are still averaging 20 plus points, or like 24 points a game. And so it's like, so that's why I kind of laughed. The Broncos still scored 21 points over on the Jets, as bad as it was, and but like, yeah, so I could definitely see a situation under Payton where you see more creative routes like that.
So Boana asked about if any of us feel that Ben Powers has been worth the money in the years. I want to tag that with someone that I think has shown out this year, that I think Sean Payton is taking a liking to, in Brandon Johnson.
So what's the connection there?
Yeah, what's the connection?
There is no connection. I'm just saying. Ben Powers has been bad. Brandon Johnson's been good. That's it.
Ben Powers is one of the biggest disappointments for me as far as players that I thought would really make a giant difference with the Broncos this year. The Mike McGlinchey signing, that was one of those that there were so many people in the know that were hot and cold on him, a lot of cold, and that he wasn't a complete right tackle, that, just he was a run guy and not a pass protector. And those people have been proven right. He's made a lot of penalties, or a significant number of penalties for a guy with his number of years in the league. I do like the fact that he speaks in the locker room. I appreciate his leadership. I appreciate his comments. But it really boils down to that these guys both are under massive contracts. They were supposed to make a giant difference in terms of the run game and the offense, and neither has happened. And, couple that with the fact that when you look at the number of rushing attempts throughout the course of each of the games, they are much lower than I was expecting, and split amongst three guys. It is just astounding that the running game is just not happening at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, this team at the end of the day just doesn't have that mindset to where they're just going to ground and pound, run the football, and physically kick your ass and dominate up front. This team just doesn't have that mindset. They just don't have those dogs, man. They really don't. And that's what I thought guys like Ben Powers were going to bring. And at least Mike McGlinchey in the run game. We've seen Mike McGlinchey at least have a couple of nice plays in the run game. But on the whole, considering how much money you're paying these guys, and that flows to just the whole free agent well as a whole, you're always going to overpay pretty much in free agency. Mm-hmm. This is why we circle back to the Broncos have not drafted an offensive tackle since 2017. Mm-hmm. The last time, I mean, granted, they've at least tried at the guard position. Dalton Reisner, Quinn Miners, that looks like a pretty strong pick. I mean, I can't really complain too much about that. He's had his moments of down for sure, but I think it's been more up and down with Quinn. But with guys like Dalton Reisner, everybody thought that he was going to be that big difference maker, the 10-year starter at guard, and then he just never developed. So, but at tackle, it's inexcusable. The last time the Broncos drafted an offensive tackle was Garrett Bowles in 2017. This is why we started over 20 different players at right tackle since they moved Orlando Franklin from right tackle to left guard in 2014. That move has consistently come back to haunt the team. And the unwillingness to draft and develop in the trenches, I feel like, especially at offensive tackle, that's one of the reasons why this team sucks on the offensive line.
And Garrett Bowles wasn't even the best tackle available at the time they picked him.
Yeah, Ryan Ramczyk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I'll be right back.
Just taking a breath. Okay. So one of the other things that we continue to hear every week is, oh my God, Russell Wilson's so bad, you need to get rid of Russell Wilson. Listen, Russell Wilson is top 5 quarterback in the league right now. He is one of the bright spots of the Broncos. And so going into this rebuild, me personally, I think you stick with Russell Wilson. And instead of going after like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May or something like that, instead you go and grab a receiver in the top 5, like maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. comes out.
I'm shocked.
I'm just saying, we were talking about it in the game. You pair him with Jerry Jeudy and Marvin Mims and Brandon Johnson. Why not? You go get a tackle in the top 5. You go get a defensive tackle in the top. Go get a middle linebacker, somebody. There are so many other holes to fill on this team than to have to worry about drafting a rookie quarterback and putting him behind this line. Because honestly, let's say you go get Caleb.
If we get a top 5 pick and don't pick a quarterback, that is a colossal.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, let's say you draft Caleb Williams, right? Let's say we get number 1 and we get Caleb Williams. He still has to play behind this line. How does that make anything better?
Because you know why? Because you see teams like Cincinnati, the moment they drafted Joe Burrow, automatically turn their futures. You saw with the Chargers, they drafted Justin Herbert. Their future changed dramatically.
And they almost made the playoffs.
They almost made the playoffs. Tua Tagovailoa fits in a system before Mike McDaniel. And they ended up becoming playoff contenders and possibly even Super Bowl contenders in 2023 because they have the greatest show on turf, or at least the best offense since the greatest show on turf.
Greatest show on surf.
Yeah. But I think that, like, again, the thing is, like, I'm not going to shy away in the sense of, like, yeah, I would not mind a guy like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Keon Coleman taking shots at that, or like the Penn State tackle. That's probably the best tackle in the draft. Maybe drafting him. I'm not opposed to that, but here's the thing: the whole idea is when you have this Russell Wilson identity is like, the plan was obviously to have him contend with this team and go forward with playoffs, but also you don't want to be stuck in QB purgatory, which is something that we have been post Peyton Manning. And so if you don't, at the very least, have your quarterback of the future in place, in that building, you will be in QB purgatory again. And so if you have the option to draft a Drake May, a Michael Penix Jr., maybe a Shedeur Sanders if he comes out, I doubt it. But I mean, guys like Cam Ward, JJ McCarthy, I think that like the thing that the Broncos will find themselves in is something that I've been pushing that drum is, you do move on with Russell Wilson, but that's where it finds yourself into the Alex Smith conversation to where, he will start and he's a solid bridge for that quarterback, like a Drake May or a Michael Penix Jr. or a JJ McCarthy or even a Cam Ward, who I think people are sleeping on in terms of a QB prospect. So those are the types of situations where the Broncos cannot pass that up.
Mm-hmm.
So let me propose a little scenario to you then. So let's say that the Denver Broncos end up with like the 7th overall pick or something like that. I think we're probably shooting in between territory of like 3 through 7 right now. If I had to guess, would you come up to get your guy? Would you come up in the draft to get your guy? If
what
like,
would you predict you'd have to do?
First rounder this year, first rounder next year, and let's throw Jerry Jeudy into the mix.
I mean, so I'm guessing it's a trade-up situation, right? I mean, as risky as it is, and it's risky within the top 10, I mean, if that's I hate to use this as a reference because the Carolina Panthers have looked like crap, but you don't make that decision to trade up as much as you did to number 1 unless you actually have your guy, right? Unless you actually have the guy in mind that you want to draft. And people made so much about the idea of, do they take Anthony Richardson and, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whoever that's a conversation for another day based on how Anthony Richardson's performing, CJ Stroud's performing, et cetera. And of course, Bryce Young. But like, if you have your guy in mind and you are set on him, you can either bet that he'll be there at your pick 7, or if you're not set on that, make that certain call and the trade that you need to ensure that you can get to that pick and take that quarterback. So I would just say you just better be darn sure that that quarterback that you want, like a Drake May, or a Michael Penix Jr. is going to be there.
Well, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask is, out of those 4 or 5 quarterbacks that you named, let's say that the Broncos have 3 through 6, one of those picks. Would they, if they traded back, let's say to like 10, 11, 12, 13, are one of those quarterbacks still going to be available? Like, could you trade back, still get the quarterback of the future, and pick up some more draft capital to go get a tackle or a receiver or something along those lines?
So what's weird is I was just going to say, like, what's interesting about this year is that the teams that are really struggling the most, essentially, with the exception of the Bengals, who have kind of done a little turnaround, and the Panthers, who got their guy, all are looking at quarterback. So if you go back to the teens, bless you, if you go back to the teens, I don't think you're going to get a top 4 guy at that point.
Yeah,
be kind of like Mac Jones to the Patriots or Kenny Pickett to the Steelers. That's kind of where, if you're picking a quarterback in that 10 to 15 to 20 sub range, I mean, occasionally you'll hit on someone like a Lamar Jackson, sure,
right,
but more often than not, you're going to get a Kenny Pickett or a Mac Jones.
Well, and I was going to say, like, if there's
I'll grab the comments, Mike.
And I was going to say, if you could predict maybe any
or don't say that freaking name ever. That would be my worst fear, is that we ended up with a Daniel Jones. That would be my literal worst fear. That'd be QB purgatory all over again.
But I was going to say, like, if there is a quarterback that I think that if you could possibly select within the 10 to 15 range by trading back, it would be probably a Michael Penix Jr. Possibly, because I know people feel like maybe he's a 2nd-round draft pick. I actually think he's going to go in the top 15. So I think Penix is one of those guys that you could probably fall in love with. Cam Ward, JJ McCarthy are your, guys that you could probably take in the second and third, truly have them sit under Russ, and not saying that taking any of those guys with Russell Wilson, you wouldn't be doing the same thing, but, so I just think that like definitely Michael Penix Jr. is absolutely within that top 15.
Yep. And just like the second round, sometimes you're going to end up with Jalen Hurts. Sometimes you're going to end up with Drew Lock. That's kind of the crapshoot you're taking with a quarterback in the second round.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know when Cam said second round, I had Drew Lock PTSD.
So I'm looking at the draft order right now, and I want to ask a serious question. We've had this conversation before, but speaking of quarterbacks, the Bears have the first 2 picks right now. Let's say they go Caleb Williams. That leaves Justin Fields open.
Yes.
Instead of drafting a quarterback, do we go after Justin Fields and use the draft to fill other holes?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen. Okay. Go ahead, Cam.
No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I certainly formulated this a little more.
It's such an interesting dynamic though, because it's the Justin Fields dilemma is a much higher degree of the conversation we were having with Trey Lance this offseason. But the thing is, if Justin Fields keeps performing with what we've seen the last 2 weeks for the extended period of the season, the Broncos aren't going to end up with Justin Fields. Do you know why? Because if he keeps playing at such a high clip, he's going to end up being a starter somewhere else. And so, and by that token, you're better off drafting your quarterback than actually taking a chance on a guy like Justin Fields.
So now I propose this question to you. Let's say, for example, Russell Wilson continues to play at an extremely high level. We have to make a decision on Russ going into this offseason, because if he's on the roster the 4th day of the 2024 league year, his 2025 salary becomes fully guaranteed. So if we're picking in that, let's go 7, like pick 7, do you risk moving on from Russell Wilson and the quarterback potentially not being there? Because if you go into the following year, you're kind of in trouble because you have Jarrett Stidham and that's about it. So if the quarterback's not there and you move on from Russ, then you may have made a big mistake.
Yeah, I think that it's and the thing is, like, that's especially the conversation that you have to have as an organization, because if you are in that 3 to 7 range, it's pretty obvious the moment you take your quarterback, that's going to be your quarterback, right?
Right.
So it's just the question is just going to become one, and this is not to open up another layer, but like it also opens up another conversation, which is, let's just say you take that quarterback within 3 to 7, and it's like I said, it's very obvious your quarterback. Russ may not want to be your quarterback at that point. Not saying that Russ would, come out and actually be like that, but like it's possible that Russ wouldn't want to be your starting quarterback at that point because you took your future starter, right? So it's certainly possible that at that particular point, the Broncos make that decision, like, okay, it's finally time to bite that bullet because Russ doesn't want to be here, so let's move on from him. And then that's when you're looking at, I think it was Henry Chisholm from DNVR that posed the question, possibly like trading him over to Pittsburgh and then taking on, like, what is it, roughly like that 18.5 million or so, like the 2 for $37 million or something like that deal, like in essence what it would be. So I don't know if they would do that. Based on the contract, I would rather trade him to like a Florida team, which is obviously not going to happen. But I think if you can obviously offload that.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a very obvious too, is like the restructuring of a contract. So, because I think Teddy Bridgewater did that, right? Because like when the Broncos did the trade with Teddy Bridgewater, George Payton somehow magically restructured like 3/4 of Teddy Bridgewater's contract. So it is certainly possible that Russ could restructure in order to make a deal like that happen too.
Or I'll propose another scenario. What if Russ restructures to stay here and the drafting of a quarterback, it could add fuel to the fire for Russ. I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers go out after Jordan Love was drafted. There was talk, I remember that offseason, if Aaron Rodgers was physically done. Not saying Russell has MVP caliber football football in him. But after the Packers drafted Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers went out and won back-to-back MVP seasons. So there is a world out there where I feel like Russ would want to stay. He'd be that mentor. I feel like he'd take like that Alex Smith approach where he could be that mentor, but still focus on playing at a high level and winning football games for the Denver Broncos, but also knowing at the same time, it's also my job to sort of groom the successor, but also at the same time, no, this is my job still. I'm still the guy in Denver.
I agree with you. And because to go a little step further on that, Gage, I think that like there's also a window where everything that we had seen, and I'm not even wrapping the quarterback in the draft with this conversation, but like I could even foresee a situation where Russ restructures because of the money situation that they're in. He restructures his deal, restructures his contract to put the Broncos in a much better, cap situation, money situation, so that they can go out and make moves to make that team better in the offseason. So I could foresee just another layer of that to where it's not just to, possibly help bring the quarterback in and, to groom the quarterback of the future, but also to help make them a better suitable organization to bring players in.
Yeah, maybe, maybe they shave a couple of years off Russ's deal, turn it into void years, and then backload a lot of that money. I could very easily see that. And we've got owners who have cash on hand. So we can make those restructures like that happen with relative ease. There's teams like the Raiders, for example, that don't have that cash on hand, or the Bengals until they finally had to sell naming rights to their stadium in order to get the liquid cash on hand to give Joe Burrow his deal and presumably Jamar Chase when it's time for him to get paid his deal as well. So we already have that money. We've got that Walmart money. So that's something that we kind of have a bit the luxury of, that we can move that money around, baby, and potentially not be in as big of salary cap trouble as a lot of people think we're going to be.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So with the whole trade up, trade back scenario, I kind of want to go through the top 10, see which teams are probably going to go quarterback so that we can kind of get an idea of if we did trade back, would we get a quarterback or would we need to trade up to try to get the one we want? So you got the Bears first and second. Obviously, it looks like they're going to get a quarterback at 1 or 2.
And then they'll probably trade down with their second pick with Carolina's pick.
See,
whatever the other pick is.
I could see them taking Caleb Williams. If they got 1 and 2, I could see them taking Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr.
That'd be disgusting.
Jiminy.
Yeah, I could see them keeping that second pick.
And then Denver's got the third pick right now, obviously. So let's take them out. Then it's the Vikings. Do we think they're moving on from Kirk Cousins?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's done he's
and listen, I
35 years old.
I listened to Justin Jefferson's press conference the other day, and it really, really sounded like he wanted to keep Kirk Cousins as his quarterback, or he'd go where Kirk Cousins was.
I mean, I know he likes working with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is very Justin Jefferson friendly. He's not afraid to throw a ball up to him when he sees him single covered. I mean, I can see why Justin likes playing with Kirk, but by that same token, though, I mean, I think Kirk Cousins, a lot of landing spots for him have been circulated, like places like Atlanta, that really feels like they almost are like a Kirk Cousins tier quarterback away.
Funny enough.
Would Kirk Cousins go back to Washington though? I mean, now that Snyder's gone, maybe.
Yeah,
I've even heard New England is a potential landing spot for Kirk.
Well, and that's who's next is New England. They're
definitely
number 5.
Yeah, they've been outscored 72-3 in the last 2 games. Bill Belichick,
got a quarterback running around hitting people in the nuts,
hitting or cup checking,
love tapping.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Seriously, Mac Jones is, as someone who lives in New England, this guy is considered dog meat here. I would suspect that they'd be in the market for a quarterback. I mean, there's potentially a Malik Cunningham start this weekend.
That's putting it lightly, by the way. For what Glenn was, that's putting it lightly. For what Glenn was saying.
Number 6 is the Giants. I think Daniel Jones is.
I mean, they're kind of stuck with him financially. I think they might go offensive line.
You think so?
Yeah.
They refused to apparently pay Saquon Barkley when they literally paid Daniel Jones, and it's biting him in the butt.
Yeah.
Stupid.
And Then after the Jets is the Cardinals, and it really sounds like they're going to move on from Kyler Murray.
Oh, that of all the quarterback dilemmas that's actually out there, the one that is very easy, as like truly like very easy, is Arizona's is moving on from Kyler. And frankly, we mentioned Atlanta. Atlanta's actually seems like one of the most likely landing spots possibly for Kyler, like this early for to put him there, which would be interesting.
That'd be a good one, but I feel like Atlanta would have to move on from Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
Kyler and Arthur Smith, archaic ass offense. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then number 8, you got the Packers. I don't think they're going to move on
No,
from Jordan
they're-
Love yet.
Not after.
I don't
Oh,
know.
no, I don't know.
After all that Aaron Rodgers crap with Jordan Love, you really think they're going to give up on year 1?
They could. He's not been great.
And they have to make a decision on him with his 5th-year option. It's I think after this.
They
they
restructured it. They restructured it. So he's basically, I think, on a 1-year deal right now, or maybe a 2-year deal.
But still, like that's enough of a deal for them still to take a chance on a quarterback. And so I think they're like, so they very well could. And plus, this is the same team that drafted a quarterback, with Aaron Rodgers there. So like, let's not like, make it seem like they might not take a quarterback. Like they very well could, because of the fact that they did do it when Aaron Rodgers was there.
I mean, and Jordan Love was ass last night. He really was.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's actually a stronger chance than Broncos country is giving credit for us to be able to beat the Green Bay Packers. That might be our next win. It really might be.
That's good, because I'll be there.
Hey, I will too.
Pick 9 is the Raiders. But
Yes.
who in God's name knows who's going to be coach?
Actually,
or what? Even if they stick with McDaniels.
Hey,
what's
they're
he
on
gonna
Caleb
do?
Williams' list. He's gonna be the next-
Last time he drafted the quarterback was Tim Tebow.
Actually, Aiden O'Connell will be the Tom Brady arc with Josh McDaniels. It's fine. They're gonna just roll with Aiden O'Connell.
Wow.
You guys are just assuming Josh McDaniels is going to be the coach next year.
They can't
Right?
fire him. They literally don't have the money.
Uh,
Talking
is that-
about cash
but-
for franchise.
Maybe Mark Davis should stop paying that 20-something girl to hang out with him, and they might have some of that money.
Wow.
Yeah, and stop gambling at an airport down there in Vegas.
Yeah, go back to the bowl cuts instead of paying for a nice buzz cut. Obviously, pick 10 is the Cardinals, so I'm going to go with pick 11, which is the Jets.
Jets
No.
might.
No, they won't.
Stick with Rodgers.
no.
They'll probably go
I-
offensive line, man. They
They need it bad. They're
Yeah.
going to roll this thing back with Rodgers next year. So whatever position that they need to solidify that unit, which is really probably offensive line.
It's Bangkok, KB82.
was that the Mac
so-
Jones travel agency?
So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 teams picking quarterbacks, not including us.
I love how Mike's watching porn but pretending that he's reading a draft order. Like that's
Yeah,
pretty
you want to watch
impressive.
it? You want to watch it with me?
Pretty
No.
impressive.
But no, I
Hold on, let me pull one up.
oh my-
What do you have like a bookmark or something?
Yeah. Don't you?
but I just think that like
You got to save your favorites.
we gotta say full disclosure that like we're talking about this now, obviously. So there is so much that is going to be changing from now till obviously the Senior Bowl and and obviously the interview process and everything like that. So we say it now, and also there have been teams, not to name names, Tennessee, but like that like may actually are quarterback needy teams, but actually don't take that chance when they need to, or make dumb decisions like trade AJ Brown over to the Philadelphia Eagles and actually draft his replacement in Treylon Burks, which is not even panning out. So
Man, he sucks.
So QB needy teams, in what seems like they're QB needy teams, don't actually take the quarterback when they actually should. So there is still that window of opportunity where, like, it's certainly possible that, like you said, was it 4 or 5 basically within the top 10 that seem like 6 that maybe quarterback needy teams? I would venture to guess that probably there would be quarterbacks taken maybe by half of those teams.
But at the same
mentioned
time,
the senior-
having that many potential teams that could take a quarterback means that if Denver is in the top 5, we probably need to take a quarterback or we're going to miss out.
If they want one, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cam mentioned the Senior Bowl. That's what Bill calls his toilet, actually.
You're not far behind, Glenn, so I wouldn't be making too much fun.
With all those ding dongs.
Wow. Okay. After talking about football and porn and all kinds of stuff, do you think we have any shot at beating the Chiefs on Thursday?
Define any.
Like 0% to 100%. What percentage are we at right now that we can beat the Chiefs?
So, in the vein of Dumb and Dumber, right? It's 1 in a million, which does mean that there is a chance. You know, but like overall though,
so will they? There's a chance.
But overall, will they win though? No. The Kansas City Chiefs will beat us by 2 scores. It'll be bad. It's Thursday night. It's going to be a boring Thursday night game. I'm not going to watch it because I'm going to be at a church function. So I'm kind of happy I'm not actually watching it. But like, no, I don't foresee it actually being a good game. But if they do win, the Broncos do win and they break the streak, then Taylor Swift has to show up against, when the Broncos play them at home. And, like that. And she and Travis Kelce have to stay together because that's exactly the mojo that apparently broke the streak. So, I mean, I don't make the rules, but like that's going to have to happen.
Yep. So I'm going to say absolutely not. The only way that would happen is if Mahomes and Kelce both got knocked out of the game. That's the only way. And even then, like I could see Blaine Gabbert doing what he had to do to win. I still get haunted by Matt Moore carving up the Broncos defense in 2019 after Mahomes dislocated his kneecap on that quarterback sneak. Yeah. Oh, that was not a fun game to be at. Oh, I was like the only Broncos fan that was still left in my section by the third quarter. It was all Chiefs fans doing their freaking tomahawk chops, and that was easily the worst. That was easily the worst Chiefs game that I've ever had to witness. And I've witnessed some bad losses to the Chiefs, but that was easily the worst one. That fucking Thursday night.
I was gonna pull it up, but no, it's the Zach Wilson with his mom's friend. Sorry.
Stifler's mom.
Why do you keep pulling it up?
Stacy's mom.
I know. It was my twist on it.
Stifler's mom.
Somebody's about to get in trouble.
Why is it still there? So we said about Drew Lock. Why is he still here? I thought that if the Broncos had done a number on the Jets like I had originally thought and predicted last week, that we would also follow up with a win. I think there is probably, if I could ask Cam one thing when he's at his church function on Thursday, is just pray for mercy. The beating is not as bad as it could be. I'm so tired of seeing the Broncos shouldn't be on national games, and this is just going to be, I feel like this is just going to be another thing that just adds another log on that fire. So I'm not very optimistic.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that there's a very, very strong chance that before we start getting back into division play, we're like 2-8, 1-9.
I'm just happy that Nebraska's on a bye week and the Broncos play on Thursday, so I'm free this entire weekend. So I'm gonna go to the golf course, go play some 18 holes, and enjoy my weekend. So my weekend's entirely free. So I actually thank the Broncos for actually getting rid of our misery first before we, head off to the weekend.
So Cam's gonna put balls in holes.
I literally clarified it. It's golf, but okay.
So Mike, I did see that there's also a prediction that the game you're going to be going to, the next game, the Vikings Broncos, is going to be flexed. That's the rumor that could potentially happen. Is it would flex the opposite way, bounced out of the primetime spot.
Just like last year, we had a Chiefs Broncos game Sunday night that got flexed out.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I don't see that game being on primetime. I mean, even if one of these two teams somehow magically gets their shit together, one of them is still going to suck. So, I mean, at the end of the day, man, that's not going to be on primetime.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to say or cover before we go?
I mean, I got a lot more, but we don't have the time.
Yep.
So you know what? You can find Gage on Denver Broncos Syndicate on YouTube. He's got plenty to say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got way more to say.
You got Cam tomorrow night on Mainly Broncos.
Yes.
Oh dear God. Oh, sorry. Oh, yay.
I already predict I already predict a 3-hour mainly.
There you go.
Probably gonna go for 3 hours.
Surprisingly, I was gonna say surprisingly, and mainly has never gone 3 hours before, but like I did a Cameron Parker show back before we rebranded to Mainly. Like every once in a while, I would do shows that last 3 hours, and I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
So
I
both
think you should go for it now.
So I guess we learned that Cameron and Sting both can last for 3 hours.
They can.
Good God. Okay, so we want to thank every single person that joined us in the chat. It's been fun. Make sure you check out everything that's on the MHRT network. Lots of shows, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood every game day. So make sure you check those out. Check out Cam on Mainly. Check out Gage on Denver Broncos Syndicate. Check out me and Glenn on this show. And again, we want to thank everybody. We appreciate you. We love you. We love Broncos. We love Broncos country. Everybody have a good night. Peace out. Peace.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.